Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to begin our examination of Fly in My Eye, an anthology from the late 80s, early 90s. This was published by Arcane Comics, and later on, I think Eclipse Comics reprinted this first one and did release the later ones. I'm a little confused about that, because on Comic Book Database, there's a 1990 Fly in My Eye with this cover from Eclipse with completely different contents, it looks like. So I don't know if Eclipse just got the name and just reprinted the cover and made a new comic. I don't know what's up with that. But this is the original, 1988. And speaking of Bill Sienkiewicz's cover, God, this was like Bill Sienkiewicz's prime, I think. Late 80s, post-Electra Assassin. Just everything he did was gorgeous. An amazing cover. Really bizarre. So Fly in My Eye is the brainchild of Steve Niles, one of the comic book masters of horror, and very fat, as you can see. It's a pretty substantial book. And this is before he became, 30 Days of Night Steve Niles. He was just some young punk and mostly working for Fantico, doing lots of horror comics for them. We have a really nice Jeff Gaither illustration for this Indicia page. It's dedicated to the memory of Charles Addams, which is apropos. This is basically a horror anthology, but almost like Taboo. It's a very, not postmodern. That's totally the wrong word. It's just it's not like just trying to be like the EC horror comics, which comics did for decades. That was horror comics. This is trying to be more interesting, more adult, maybe, and more maybe existential horror than just like monsters and zombies and whatever. Even though there are monsters and zombies in here. Here on this editorial page by Steve Niles, we have a really nice illustration by Elman Brown. He's another one of the guys that was I think at Fanico, just didn't do anything outside of that world, that black and white horror world. I never saw him again, but pretty accomplished artist. Here we have a nice pin-up by Dan Stefan, the great underground cartoonist, and Bored Teenage Monster Syndrome. And just Dan Stefan's really nice cartooning. He's got that perfect funny cartoon style down. Even though that's not that funny, that page. Contents page. I guess Dan Stefan was the art director of this. Steve Niles also says he's just the publisher. This is a great way to start off a comic. Steve Bissette. It's a very odd comic for Steve Bissette, for anyone. It's called Low. There's an object which dreams. And basically this, we see this flying creature describing this object that dreams. And the object that dreams is drawing him from who knows how far away. With this, almost like a siren call. And this is really just heady stuff for Steve Bissette. Within it is the free-form lover of unknowable depths, the siren of eternal explorers, the eye that sees forever. I answer its call and caress its dream shift heart. Really nice Steve Bissette art. The inner eye opens from the sleep of waking. It's almost like poetry. And then we see the winged creature just lying down, sharing the dreams of the one who dreams. And it's feeding on it. It's drinking basically like a vampire. And when my thirst is slaked, I lay with the object which dreams and dream its dreams anew, watching their movements upon the pages of the night sky. It's a weird little piece from Steve Bissette. It's not really horror, even though these look horrific, these creatures, but I don't know, it's just very odd. Here we have a nice little portfolio of Clive Barker's drawings. Introduction by James Blair Lovell. I guess he worked for Clive Barker. He was like his archivist. And Clive Barker's a really good artist. There's some really nice stuff in here. Man on a Stick by Clive Barker. That's the name of this little sketchbook. He has so many different styles. I really like this one. But then look at this. Very cartoony. Kind of reminds you of like Oscar Zarate. And I can't think of who else, but like it's a really nice cartoony style. I gotta be careful, this book is falling apart. That's a nice one. It was weird flipping the page to this last night. I used this in one of my fanzines. I just stole this. And this is like back in, I don't know, 87. So this was like really hit me. I was like, that drawing. So that's where I stole it from. Really nice kind of expressionistic drawing. Here's his painted cover of volume 1 of Books of Blood, the original English editions. I used to own these years ago, and then one Christmas I needed money, and I sold them way before, the internet. So I probably got reamed. If I saved them another 10 years, I could have sold them on eBay for a lot. But I wish these were in color, because they were the originals, and beautiful covers. Yeah, look at all this. Look at this. Crazy. Here's another Books of Blood cover, volume 4. This looks very Hellraiser-y. Man, I'd love to see Clive Barker draw a comic. That's great. Man, just so many like great ideas. Just these one-off drawings. It's like, I want to see this character again. This is from Weave World, his fantasy book. And here's his volume 6 of Books of Blood, the cover. So, this is nice. We have, this is called Arnold Gets Cross. And this is by Brian Talbot, Story and Art. It says 1981. So this is back when, I think, Brian Talbot was still contributing to that Brainstorm comic from England. It was kind of like England's Star Reach, ground level comic. And this is almost like that classic ghost story where this guy and his girlfriend, who's berating him the whole time, or wife, and they run out of gas, so he goes to get some gas. Really nice Brian Talbot art. Man, that guy does not skimp on the ink. And it's weird, he like comes across this like party of a bunch of like Hell's Angels, but they're kind of like Satanist Hell's Angels. And they find him and they basically invite him to their little party. Meanwhile, back at the car, some of the bikers have found the wife and they chase her through the woods all the way to the party. And she finds her husband with his entrails pulled out of him, crucified. And then all of a sudden, you see her face. God, that looks so much like Spain Rodriguez there, doesn't it? She says, Arnold. And we're back at the beginning of the story. It's one of those little time loop things. She says, have you even been listening to a word I said? This was apparently all in Arnold's head, the husband. But then he says, uh-oh, we're out of gas. So, it's like one of those time loop things. This next one's In the Valley of the Shadow by Larry Chambers. And this is just a biblical verse. And him kind of illustrating them, even though it looks like he's just drawing whatever the hell he wants. Pretty nice pointillistic art, I guess. Not a big fan of this kind of pointillistic art. You can tell this guy is just starting. Like a lot of college students do this. Once they discover pointillism, they go crazy with it. Even though the underpinnings of their art isn't strong enough yet. It looks kind of groovy. I mean, it's almost like cool airbrush effects and stuff. And this guy is pretty good. There's a person later on in the comic I was thinking of more where it's all pointless, but the guy can barely draw. Well, that's an overstatement. He's okay, but not that great. Yeah, that's pretty groovy. That's pretty cool. Makes it look like Virgil Finlay. Those old pulp illustrators. And now we have a story by Matt Howarth. Long time just gadabout in comics. I mean, that guy has just been around forever, cranking out stuff in all these various venues. But I think the majority of comic fans don't even know who he is. But this was he got help on the story for this by a guy named Hugh Barton. They collaborated on the story. Matt Howarth drew all the work. Yeah, Matt Howarth, it's like he's not my cup of tea. I think it's more his writing. I like his cartooning, but almost all the stories I've ever read by him just don't really hit with me. Maybe they're just a little too weird for me. I like weird stuff usually, but something about his stuff I'm not a huge fan of, but it's always interesting at least. It's not insipid, boring stuff. It just doesn't really hit home. But man, look at the craft here. He's just really puts the work in. Even his like small press fanzine stuff he draws like this. He really is a perfectionist. So there's a science fiction story, kind of a neat concept where this guy divorces his wife and then has like 600 clones made of her so he can have one in each of his villas throughout the universe because he's super rich. So he likes to have little villas in various planets, and each one he's got his own wife waiting for him, the one he divorced. So the wife is going around assassinating all of them. And I guess she has the legal right to do so. It's almost like copyright infringement. Unauthorized use of her DNA. And we finally meet the husband. And he's, of course, not too happy with all of his clone wives getting killed. And then she's talking to this psychiatrist, and he basically kind of draws it out of her. She's like, he's like, you still love your ex-husband, don't you? And she does. So it's just a very odd little emotional ending here. Here we got a short story by John Shirley, the splatterpunk author. This illustration is by Dan Stefan. Pretty nice thing. Dan Stefan draws straight. That looks pretty good. It's a really good story. Definitely in the splatterpunk genre. In fact, it's even about splatter movies. About these guys analyzing splatter movies. This is really nice. Now we get a portfolio of Ted McKeever's art. And one could argue this is Ted McKeever's prime, too. The late 80s. This is some great stuff. All of these look beautiful to me. I realized I barely looked at Ted McKeever on the channel, and I got to. I got a bunch of his stuff, and I got to start showing off some of his stuff soon. I think that's the guy from Eddy Current? I don't know. I can't remember. But I think that's the nun from Eddy Current. At least it could be with her frock off. Yeah, these are terrific. Definitely one of a kind artist, Ted McKeever. This is interesting. Peter Cooper from 1980. How I Spent My Summer Vacation. And I suspect this is like something, Peter Cooper did to like get into heavy metal or something. Because I think I read in an interview that he was trying to get into markets like that before he became just like pretty much Mr. Political Artist type, And look at this. Peter Cooper kind of drawn straight. I have a feeling this was even in color. It looks a little too muddy, like they were trying to scan color pages. I'd really like to see it in its original form. And so this kid is he's shopping, and he goes by a pet store, and this crazy, weird alien dog, I don't know what the hell it is, he basically befriends him. And so the kid takes him home. I'm glad I found Puppy, especially when it gets dark. I think this is some post-apocalyptic world. The boy gets attacked by this bird of prey, kind of mutated bird, and Puppy saves him. So weird seeing Peter Cooper draw like this. I see a little Steve Bissette in it, like the kind of roughness. Yeah, I have a feeling this would work a lot better in color. Man, look at that. You'd never guess that was Peter Cooper in a million years if I didn't tell you. I like his, Peter Cooper's crazy style, stencil style, but I wouldn't mind if he just kept doing stories like this too. He's really got the chops. Now we got another portfolio from Steve Bissette. This is really nice stuff. I couldn't find anywhere on the internet, like the CGC kind of let me down on this one. Not CGC, I'm sorry, the comic book database. I couldn't find out where any of these are from. But if I'm reading this correctly, this is from 74? Yeah. Oh, maybe it says 79. I can't tell. Just beautiful stuff. Whatever this was for. I want it. This one's really interesting because it's very slick. And it almost looks like, I don't know, this superhero that can turn into different beasts or aliens. Because this kind of looks like a superhero dude. It's got like gauntlets. I'm so curious to see what this was for. Could have been for Hollywood. Maybe he did for film production type stuff. But just that too, very interesting for Steve Bissette with the gray tones. The whole thing, I guess, is like that. Yeah. Really interesting piece. Very typical Steve Bissette. Great stuff. Yep. His love of dinosaurs shows through here. Look at that, how he was so good at that in the late 70s. It almost looks like photos. Maybe it is photos. I don't know if he was collaging things, but it's in black and white, but maybe it's airbrush, maybe it's some kind of painting, and it just looks this worm's eye view looking up to the roof of the forest, the ceiling. Just looks amazing. Like, how the fuck did he get that effect? But we see this in a lot of his, black and white work back then. Him and Veitch together, especially. God, that's really nice. This one, I don't know if this is like real early. I can't see a date on it. I would imagine this is like maybe when he was younger. Because it just looks more like, I don't know, fanish art. It's really good. It's amazing. But it also has this, I don't know, certain laboredness to it that, Steve Bissette doesn't really have in most of his work. Oh, there's another nice sci-fi one. Oh, this is pretty recent from that time, 87. Another 87. Eater of the Winds. And this one says Varney. This is interesting. It says character created by Perry and Bissette. That's Steve Perry. 1983 Marvel Comics Group. And it does sound familiar. Maybe this was in some Marvel preview or something. I don't know. Here we have The Rose. This is a story by Steve Niles, art by Elman Brown, that guy we saw earlier on the contents page. And this is a kind of interesting werewolf story. Elman Brown's pretty good. I kind of wish he continued in comics. Maybe he did, and I just don't know. But I imagine he probably got, graphic design work or something. Because it seems like he does have the chops. I mean, you can tell he's young, but you can also see that, like, in a few years, this guy could be really good. Crazy chiaroscuro shading here on the sleeves. I kind of like this. It looks like a 60s sci-fi paperback cover. So this is like I said, it's a werewolf story. Oh, before I continue, man, look how Bernie writes in that panel looks there. So, but it's like, it's an 80s werewolf story. So this guy sees this werewolf that's dying in an alley, and for some reason he instantly has this bond with it. He's not scared of it. He actually was just so almost in love with this wolf. Well, it's a werewolf, of course. And he says, "Come closer, I'm dying." And he basically claws the guy, infects him with the lycanthropy, and the guy's happy about it. And he's waiting for the full moon. He's not scared. And he turns, and then he even says, it doesn't hurt. I am new. So it's not like American Werewolf where it's torture. Kind of weird looking perspective there. His head looks really huge. But man, check out the shading here. Elman Brown definitely was trying to impress us. And so I guess he's looking for the last few remaining werewolves in the world. That's his quest. Look at this, speaking of Bernie Wrightson. This is some really nice classic old illustration stuff. Like the stuff that Wrightson did in the Frankenstein portfolio. This is a really nice page too. This could be like beautiful Alex Raymond, Hal Foster stuff. This nature is so well drawn. This is nice. We got a portfolio of Jeff Gaither stuff. Jeff Gaither did a lot of mini comics in the 80s. He was like, in that whole school of like kind of punky, ugly artists, gross artists, like R.K. Sloan. Obviously, Basil Wolverton was like their godfather. You can see lots of Wolverton and all those guys. This is weird because it says Jeff Gaither portfolio, but a lot of these are co-drawn with R.K. Sloan. You'd think they'd mention that. Even the front piece here is both of those guys collaborating. But yeah, basically his art's just really gross. I'll get, I guess, a one-page strip, Eek. They're speaking this nonsense language. But man, this is some good stuff. I always like Jeff Gaither's stuff. Amazing. Yeah, it looks like these are all from the 80s by the copyright dates. Maybe he made this for Fly in the Eye, Fly in My Eye. Man, look at that. Here's another Sloan collaboration. That is nutty. I want that on a t-shirt. That's pretty horrifying. Here's what I'm talking about. Look at this Basil Wolverton isms going on here. Those teeth are right out of Basil Wolverton. This is such an interesting story, this next one. Screaming of the Beetle. It's by SMS, the English cartoonist. He used to draw for 2000 AD. And I think he worked for like science fiction magazines and maybe even did a few book covers. But he writes and draws this. And this is like amazing, transportive sci-fi where it's just this totally alien culture, and even their bodies are just completely, like, you almost can't get a grasp on them. You know what I mean? Like some aliens, oh, they got two antennas and they're blue, so they're alien. These aliens are just truly alien. They don't look like any creature that's ever lived on Earth. And it's just basically describing their culture in a way through this kind of story of this guy's mom dies. And I think they're plant-based, or they have some connection to plants, these biological creatures. It's very odd, but really fun to read. It's that total immersive sci-fi where it's like, man, you're creating a whole new, not just a world, but the science of this world and biology of the world. I don't even know if I have any SMS in my collection. I might have some in a comp somewhere, or an anthology, I mean. But I'm really impressed. I wonder if this guy drew Nemesis the Warlock, because, you know, the weird aliens and Nemesis were just almost like you couldn't even wrap your head around them. It seems like he'd be perfect for that. Almost like Kevin O'Neill type weirdness going on. I wish this was printed a little bigger. This one definitely seems, maybe it was bigger and they shrunk it down. I don't know, maybe not, but it does seem like these pages need to breathe a little more. Really just crazy stuff. It's like some of these panels you don't really know what you're seeing, but it looks amazing because it's totally alien. This next one's weird. When I was reading it last night, I was just like, Faust by John Bolton, that character from the 80s? Because it almost seems like the font almost reminds me of the title of Faust, you know, the logo. But it's not. It's just a story that's kind of based on Faust. And it's told in rhyme. Once upon a time, there was a king, and basically he was in love with a flea. He even had the royal tailor make little breeches for the flea. Such nice John Bolton art. Some beautiful stuff. There's the flea. There's the flea in his fancy breeches. So all of his flea relatives move into the castle, start biting everyone. So we see the queen and her ladies with all these flea welts on them. And let me see what I guess that's the end. This next one's really interesting. It's so this is art by Larry Chambers, that guy from before the Bible, the biblical one. Story by Edward Griffin. And I guess doing this is almost like a mini graphic novella. And you know that earlier pointillistic art was really pretty tight. But you know, he has to do a whole, 48 pages. So some of this is pretty crude. And I guess it starts here. So it's called Blood in My Eye. And this is basically a zombie type story. Not like apocalyptic zombie. But basically there's this guy named Tate. That's his last name. And his friend Tom has been killed. This is Tom. Well, that's Tom before he was killed, and this is what he looks like now. It looks like he's been savaged by a beast. His name's Tom Carter. So here's Tate. He always wears this little beanie. And he's at the cop station, you know, IDing the body. They even question him, though. It's like, you think I killed my friend? But see, like, look at this goony face here. But it seems like some of these faces look great. I think he was using photo reference. But I think he was stretching himself a little thin. So Tate is left wondering who could have killed his friend. How could this have happened? Chambers did some interesting panel things like this. I don't necessarily know if they work or if they're successful, but it's nice to see. I always like to see people try new stuff. Here's another one with these kind of weird panels, all leading to Tom Carter. So Tom Carter apparently was killed by a zombie because he wakes up in the morgue, kills the medical examiner. I like this, the way this panel works. It's just accenting the hand. It really seems to be coming out at you. And kind of neat. Here's this detective who's following the case, and he actually hauls in Tate. He thinks he's responsible for killing the medical examiner. He's like, yeah, your friend got killed and you went crazy and killed the medical examiner. So, despite his protests, he gets thrown in a jail. Look at that face. So meanwhile, this is a realtor, Spencer, and this creepy guy wants to rent out a giant, like, warehouse space. And Spencer shows him the place, and he says, I'll take it. In fact, I'll buy it. I don't want to just rent this place. And he just gives him a big wad of cash. So he owns it now. Now we see Tom. Tom has escaped from the coroners, and he's in the city, and we see him killing a hobo and eating him. The police officer is named Lieutenant Shard. I thought that was kind of funny. See, look at that, how well drawn that is. That's like a total photo reference there. That looks pretty good. The reason the story is kind of like, it's very crude, but it kind of reminds me of one of those weird, kind of great, like straight to DVD or straight to VHS movies you'd see, where, it's like, it's some cheapo horror movie where the guys are kind of inept. The movie's not a good movie. It's not well made, but because it's so inept, that's its charm. Because it's not just charming. The fact that these guys don't even know how to make a proper screenplay. There's that classic way of telling a story, which, to be honest, we all know. 1 act, 2 act, 2nd act, 3rd act. There's the characteristics change. Usually a happy ending. We're all so bored of that. I liked when these wonky directors who didn't even know the rules, how to write a screenplay properly, quote unquote. So their movies were, even if they were inept and kind of goofy, they also were like, you had no idea where they were heading. And this totally gave me that feeling of just like, this isn't the best story I've ever read by a long shot. But I was really turning the pages like, where is this heading? I have no idea. I don't think the writer had any idea until he got to the last page. Tom Carter finds out that the more blood he ingests from killing people, he's basically healing himself. His wounds are closing up. Tom goes to the jail, and he basically is drawn to his old friend Tate. He doesn't remember who he is, so he's asking him, who am I? Some more crazy panel stuff going on. And basically Tate loses his mind. He just goes insane. His brain can't take it anymore. It's kind of nice. Turns out that guy who bought the giant warehouse, he's got like all these children zombies who kind of follow him blindly. Look at that crazy design page. This definitely looks like a photo reference there. Some of these faces, like, totally off model. They get all goony. There's another interesting design page. Yeah, I gotta say, there's some really nice art in this. And then there's some really cruddy art in it. But for the most part, it's pretty damn nice. That's Tom eating a rat just to get some blood. He puts so much work into all these portraits, basically, these pointillistic portraits, and then he'll draw a cityscape like this. And then look at this panel compared to that one. That almost looks like a photo. So those little kids, those kid zombies are basically running around killing people, eating people. We see them here attacking a mother and her little toddler son. But Tom recognizes them. He's basically got his brain back. He knows who he was. And he realizes those zombie children are the ones that turned him into a zombie. And he's like, I'll kill you all, you little bastards. So it's almost like he's the good zombie fighting the bad kid zombies. And some of this stuff was so like nephew art. Maybe he didn't have a photo reference there. So Tom kind of wins the children over. Basically, because this guy is abusing the kids. He starves them so that they'll be extra hungry when he wants to sick them on someone. So he's not very nice to these little kids. And Tom basically says, like, I won't starve you. Tom even lets her bite his arm and suck his own blood. He says, here, you're hungry? You can have some of mine. Okay, I don't know if we ran out of time here, but like things are getting really primitive here. But look at this building. Well, I'll show you later in one page. There's a bigger picture of it. So look at this. That's supposed to be the warehouse where Galt is the villain, where he lives. Really weird. So basically Tom assaults this warehouse and the children turn against Galt. And they all attack him. A very odd panel here, this transitional panel showing the kids falling down from the ceiling onto Galt. Yeah, this is pretty big story. So the kids have fully defeated Galt. They chomp down on him. And then I guess Tate, who's pretty insane now, and his zombie buddy Tom live happily ever after, it says. So I guess they'll be quite the odd couple. This one is Hyperboy Goes on a Date by Kurt Sayenga. And you could tell this guy was like really into like indie comics, and this was his bid for that market. Not that into this. I really don't like this cartoon and that stupid character design for Hyperboy, but this looks pretty great to me. This is some nice cartooning, I think. But I hate the way he draws Hyperboy. And not much going on here. It's a typical like indie comic where he's spouting his philosophy to her and ranting. He goes to get her some popcorn, and by the time he comes back, they're in a movie theater, I should have mentioned. By By the time he comes back, she slashed her wrists. And all I can say is, you stupid shit. So now we get some more John Bolton. We get a nice little portfolio. Some of this stuff is pretty old. It's from like 1980, early 80s. But man, it's all really nice. This finger licking. It's kind of, this nasty stuff. It almost looks like John Bolton did this for some project. It all looks like very similar. These creepy images. Mama. Eye level. Man, that's a nice one. I think I've seen this before somewhere. This looks very Hellraiser-y. Now we have another prose story, Street Life by Douglas E. Winter. I think that guy's a pretty big horror writer. And Elman Brown does the drawings. And it's not so great. Kudos that it's all written, handwritten though. I always like that when they do that. Oh, I don't have to show you all this. There's no more art except for here. Pretty nice. Kind of weird story. Yeah, definitely wouldn't mind seeing some more of this Elman Brown guy. This is Juan Chavaria, and this is Roses and Thorns. And this is just nonsense. You can probably read it on your screen. It's almost like some Steve Ditko comic from his later years. I don't know what it's doing. It's like almost like these formulas. And it's just gobbledygook. It's not even comics. I don't know what the hell it is. I guess, well, that's a nebulous term, but it's a waste of page. This is a pretty dumb one. Brian Clark. And I have a feeling Brian Clark was just some young kid that maybe Steve Niles took pity on. This is pretty bad. This guy could be great, you know, with enough pages, you know, but this is not. I'm sure this is one of his earliest things that he drew and wrote. Basically, it's the babysitter arrives. The mother says, "Oh, Tommy has an imaginary boyfriend. Sorry, not boyfriend. An imaginary friend. He's invisible." The babysitter peeks in his room because she hears voices, and it's not invisible anymore. It's this horrible creature. She freaks out, and she runs downstairs to escape. Tommy basically says, "You can't let her go. If Mom finds out, you won't be able to live here anymore." So he goes downstairs, and before she can run out the door, he just crushes her into a bloody pulp, basically. When the mom comes home, she's kind of just talking to the babysitter, saying, "Hey, Kate, dear, I'm back." She doesn't see her, though. And then all of a sudden the door slams, and the voice, "Okay, thanks, Miss Miller, bye." It's really the invisible monster pretending to be Kate. And she says, "No, I haven't given your money yet." So then the monster is like using Kate as a meat puppet. He's got her, so to trick the woman into thinking she's still alive. It's just all around very dumb, very, very poorly drawn story. These next two are weird. This is On the Porch, story by Steve Niles, art by Lee T. Wheeler. And obviously you can see this guy's very kind of a humorous artist, cartoonist. And these are kind of funny. I mean, not really. I think they're supposed to be funny, but we see these three old coots who hang out every day at this gas station porch. And one of them saying, "I got Satan lives in my refrigerator." They don't believe him. So he says, "Go and check for yourself." And they're like, "Hey, you weren't lying. The devil does live in your fridge." And then we have On the Porch 2, a sequel. Same creative crew. This guy Slim comes by, and they say, "Hey, do you want to see Satan in a refrigerator?" So they go check it out. Turns out the refrigerator hasn't been plugged in. Slim notices that. And when everyone goes back out to the porch, one of them stays behind and plugs it in. And it seems like that kills Satan. He's fried down to just bones. This guy kind of reminds me of like P.S. Mueller. Maybe that's the wrong name I'm looking for, but just so many guys in the 80s kind of drew like this kind of style. It's kind of interesting. Here we have a one-pager by Steve Bissette, Astral Ecology, Soul Leader. I know I've seen this before. I think this was reprinted in one of the Steve Bissette collections, and I can't remember what it was done for. Maybe it was done for Warren Magazine. And it says 1982, so I don't know. Could have been done for Scholastic, even though it's a little too heady for that. It's about this alien that actually sucks the auras off of creatures. It's like an oral vampire. Not oral like Oral Roberts, but oral like your aura. This one's so weird. This is Dan Stefan writing and drawing. Gorilla My Dreams. Just about a guy who falls in love with this gorilla named Diane. Even though Diane, like, is visiting someone's house for dinner, Diane eats the child. I mean, it's a typical gorilla. I love this. He's all like, oh, our honeymoon was so amazing. And just this image of Diane in these garters and stockings and high heel shoes. So, of course, he loses a lot of friends, but whatever, he's in love. And then the last panel, there's a note from Diane. I'm leaving you. I hate you. You're sick. And then we just have some ads for various stuff. There's Taboo, which came out right around this time. To be honest, I'd be reviewing Taboo right now, but they're a little naughtier. So YouTube wouldn't let me get away with it. They would pull the videos down. But whenever I finally get my OnlyFans page up, which I'm working on, I'll be able to show anything I want. And I'll definitely be checking out those Taboos. One of my favorite anthologies of all time. So this is almost like a special education, a cousin of Taboo. But there's definitely some interesting stuff in there. Some really nice stuff, too. Unfortunately, sometimes there's some really crappy stuff. Like, I think Steve Niles just needed a little more tight editorial rein on some of this stuff. But overall, pretty interesting stuff. Definitely back in 1988 when I bought this off the stands, there wasn't much like this. It was pretty damn interesting then. So hope you guys like looking at it. Kind of worth it just for this Bill Sienkiewicz cover, which I've never seen reprinted anywhere. And I guess that's it for today. So hopefully I'll see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.